Hey everybody, welcome back to At Home, the series where I get a chance to talk with other folks at Cisco and in our partner community about really how this crisis, COVID-19, has affected everyone. I mean, we're all at home, here at Cisco specifically, but across the globe. A lot of us are at home far more than we've ever been used to. You know, I'm in sales, and a lot of the folks that I talk to here at Cisco are also in sales. And so by nature, we're able to work from home far more often than probably other people are have the privilege of being able to do. But not everybody's in the same boat. And so today I want to talk to a good friend of mine, Gaurav Khanna, here in just a moment about, you know, what it's like to be at home far more frequently than he has been in the past. So today, like I said, we're at home with Gaurav. How you doing?
Hey, Jeff, how are you? Good to see you again.
You too, man. You too. So, you know, I guess what I like to kick off with everybody when we have these conversations is really like, how are you? What is life like now that you're like in the house so much more than you've ever been before in professionally, I guess?
Yeah, good question. So things are actually going well. As you alluded to in your opening, Jeff, you know, we have had a work from home or work remotely culture for a while. So, you know, work is getting done. So we can get a lot accomplished, and a lot of our teams are remote anyways. And in fact, for a lot of our colleagues, this is in some ways, well, if you exclude all the craziness going on in the world, for a lot of them, their workday is a lot of business as usual. But of course, it's unusual that we're all doing it. But yeah, overall, I think it's gone pretty well. We've learned a few things along the way, right?
Yeah,
overall, thumbs up.
Awesome, dude. I can imagine. How is it, you know, you and I have talked recently a few times about sort of what it's like to be not just at home, but away from the office more. And I think you've had some, at least from me, in my perspective, you've had some pretty unique insights into, you know, even though you can work remote, being in the office, there is a benefit to that. So I guess I'm really curious from your perspective, how are you finding ways with your team to balance the things you can do in an office, like physically whiteboarding, getting into a scrum room or whatever you want to call it, and doing that. So how have you found ways to balance that now that or create a rhythm in that life and work stuff now that you're at home so much more?
Yeah, good. Another good question. So, you know, one of the challenges, like with any crisis, you learn a lot of good things. You learn some things that, you know, about yourself and your team. So while we can get a lot of work done, my work is with some of our developers and some of our engineers, and we do a lot of whiteboarding. I mean, that's very critical to what we do. We do a lot of brainstorming. We're creating platforms. We're releasing code. And so whiteboarding is a very critical part of how we work. So I miss that. So much of my work actually involves whiteboarding, taking a photo and putting it in WebEx Teams. In fact, we were half joking. Somebody should create an app that would make a lot of money, you know, just converting the chicken scratch on the whiteboard into, you know, PowerPoint diagrams. So we can't do that anymore. But what that's taught us is that, you know, you don't have access to that. I don't have a whiteboard behind me to sort of whiteboard. And it wouldn't matter anyways, because whiteboarding is sort of a group activity, right? Mm-hmm. So me whiteboarding is not the same as all of us together in the office and doing it. But then you realize you have things like SharePoint, which we use now very extensively. You can put a canvas there. You can put Excel there, have people put in ideas. And so there are tools available. It's not the same, obviously, as being in person, but there are ways to sort of collaborate very intelligently in which you get people to share ideas, put them down, and work together. So it takes a little bit of getting. I think we sort of have to abandon this notion that, you know, I wish I was in the office. I wish I was in the office. Yes, we'll get back there soon, but it's not going to come soon enough for work to be done. So you just have to adapt.
Yeah, that makes total sense. How is it? What are things like, or if you could pick kind of one thing at home, it doesn't matter whether work, passion, responsibilities, family, whatever it is, one thing at home that is like very different now than it was before, what would that be?
So I think it's very easy when you're sitting at home for it to quickly turn into like a 16-hour day. Whereas when you're at the office, it's very hard to do that. First of all, because you don't really have a desk, right? We have this open workspace. So whatever desk I have, you know, it's there, but I have to drag all my stuff into another room when I have a meeting and drag it back. So actually, naturally, I'm in motion a lot. There's a break room nearby, so you're up. I happen to work on a floor where I know people who I started at Cisco with, you know, so we see each other in the hallway, we say hi. It's impossible not to be social in the office, especially when there are a lot of people around. So you're up and about, and there's sort of a natural time you need to leave because you're mindful of rush hour traffic. You're like, oh my gosh, I got to either beat the rush hour traffic or wait and leave later. So there's sort of a cadence to sort of rhythms of sort of society, if I can use that word, which you sort of plan your day around and you're up and about. Here, you have to be really careful that you're just not sitting down for
Okay.
a long time. So I've tried to
100%.
get up, go for walks, just do things and trying to not be just sitting in my chair because that makes it very, very challenging. Just physically also, it can be exhausting.
Most
It
definitely.
sounds weird. Yeah.
I had never really thought about it like that before. That in the office there's like cues, like nonverbal cues that we're all like completely ingrained in just having been in a career at any point, or a career that has us in an office. Not all
Yeah.
careers are like that, but I hadn't thought about that. Like, I've got to leave by a certain time to beat traffic. I got to go home by a certain time, same reason. Everyone's getting up and walking over to the cafeteria to get lunch at the same time, or whatever that happens to be. I never thought about that. Those cues don't really exist in your house unless you force or like create them for yourself. That's
Right.
interesting. Have
Yeah,
you?
and a lot of those cues, in the quarantine, and I think that's what's made it tough for some people is those sort of cues we're used to as human beings. We're social animals, right?
Yes.
They're sort of gone, and I'm not sure it's so much something that we have to get used to. That I think it's something we have to adjust around and just hope that sort of our natural rhythm comes back. When things open up. So I don't know if I'm forcing myself to believe that I just have to adjust for this forever. Like I just have to adjust to this in a healthy way for the foreseeable future, and then things will get better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Have you, with your team specifically, have you found any? Have you found yourself wanting to, or any feedback from your team wanting to tune some way that you currently do your work, do meetings or whatever else, based off of the fact that you guys are? I mean, I know most of the folks you work with are I'm guessing, are not near where you were at. Have you found? Or have you found like them giving you feedback, or you coming up with an idea to do something just a little different than you were doing before? Anything?
Yeah, so we've actually taken some good cues from Cisco. I really want to just credit the company all the way up to leadership, for really just making sure we're doing okay as just human beings, right? Like, Chuck has said a couple of times, we have to treat this like a public health crisis first before we really think about work. Now, obviously, we want our leaders to think about the business and work too, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that they're really trying to balance it. So, one of the things that's actually come up in some of those ELT calls, but it's come up on our team too, to your question, is, how can we, what are ways we can give people a break? So we established a ritual on our team where I hope people have used it, is they're allowed to say, you know what, I just can't join the meeting. Can we just move it to another day? Or I've had too many meetings, or can we just skip it, and just move it? Because we have to recognize that some people are just at a point where they're exhausted. They're exhausted mentally.
Oh, that's
So
such a good
no
point.
questions asked. You're allowed to move a meeting. You can say, can we start 17 minutes after the hour? So we've given everybody license to sort of
Okay.
set their meeting agenda and cadence and timing to suit them with the trust. We have the trust amongst the team that, no one's going to abuse it and just push off every meeting indefinitely. Obviously,
Yeah.
people are not doing that. But I think, at least for me, knowing that my team trusts me, I move stuff around my calendar all the time. And I'll admit, sometimes I've just moved meetings because while I'm free at 4 p.m., I'm exhausted at 4 p.m. I just, I
Yes.
can't do it. And I just say, sorry, I'm moving it, and no questions asked.
That is so cool. I had never actually thought about. I've tried to be, with my team, I've tried to be as flexible as I can. And when someone's like, "Hey, I can't make it to this" or whatever else, yeah, totally, no worries. I totally, customer stuff, whatever else, and we're trying to navigate those times. But I hadn't thought about making it, changing the dynamic entirely to just be like, look, if we need to, pull a card one day and say, look, can we just pass on today for whatever reason? Yeah, no big deal. Like that's interesting. Actually, a little bit of context. To that is you made a comment about something that since a lot of people might watch this that aren't working at Cisco, our executive leadership team today. Actually, do you want to describe it? That'd probably be better. Do you want to describe kind of what the ELT meetings
so
look like?
they're weekly. I think we call them check-in. ELT.
Yeah.
So Chuck usually kicks things off, but Fran Kasudis, who's our head of HR, sort of moderates it. We have a couple of doctors that have joined that have talked about everything from the vaccine, the pathogen itself, to vaccines, to face coverings, to how it's evolving. So it's nice that we get that perspective from a medical doctor. But we have different leaders sort of chiming in, and people ask questions. They ask some very interesting questions. We've had musical guests on, I mean, it's like just really cool.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of our weekly now kind of Cisco beat, I guess what it used to be. That's kind of become our new Cisco beat, right?
Yeah,
and it's just
it totally has.
just like a cool check-in. Yeah.
It's pretty wild. I don't know how many companies do anything like that. I've read about a few out there who are doing more frequent activities like that, but it does feel really good. I got to be honest, to know that your leaders are clearly focusing on the business because they're the leaders of a huge multi-billion-dollar business. Right. Of course they will. But they're also very focused on the people that work here and that we all are in the same boat together. It is, I don't mean this to be like a Cisco commercial, but it is a really cool feeling for sure.
Yeah. And actually, so I know you and I like to really learn from leaders just by watching, right? So, a couple of things I've learned, if I can interject, which is really cool, they're all at home. It's funny that they're all sort of making fun of each other and everybody's commenting on what we see in the background. Like Jerry's got a portrait of her husband as a teenager or something, and people have the stuff in their background and what their office looks like, and so there's banter there. It's kind of funny. It's like just we're all together in the same boat, right? So it's just like and I find that actually pretty cool about just other calls I've been on with other people. I mean, some people have really neat offices, some people have a little bit of a mess, and it's just we're all human. So it's like, okay, whatever, that's what we all do. We're all human beings. So I think even just those subtle cues for me have made a big difference, because it's like, look, Chuck's at home. He can't go anywhere. Yes, so he can text the CEO of Verizon because something happened in the data center down in Richardson, right? I'll just text him. But the fact is, he can't go anywhere. We can't go anywhere. So it's just this kind of weekly reminder that we are really all in this together. Right?
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that. I saw us going around in one of our WebEx team spaces someplace about a few teams in some part of the U.S. that were doing office space like a contest, and it was basically everyone on the teams had to take a picture of their desk and their working spot and then submit it, and they were kind of shuffled up, and then it was like, okay, can you pair each person to their working space and
person with their office?
I love it. And I want to try that actually, I think, on my team, because I think it's so hilarious to think about, almost like a kind of an interesting exercise to think, is what you think about the person that you meet with manifests itself in their office in a way that you actually expect. Because I guarantee there's a lot of people, especially Cisco executives, who you see with this, sometimes a big leather chair they might be sitting in and a fancy background, but it's like, what do you think the rest of that office actually looks like? You're only seeing this little thumbnail like this. And the same thing for me. You see this kind of a white space behind me, whatever else, but I've told people this before in the videos. My wife, she's in here working with me right now. I'm literally in the office, her desk, so I'm on a monitor where my hands are touching right now. Her monitor is 6 inches behind my monitor. So we're literally, and they're like mirror images of each other. And so, this is our 4-year-old is asleep in the next room for his nap time, and we're both in here being productive. And it's so interesting how we're all sort of finding this different way to work. Have you found yourself getting out of the office and working, going out to your backyard or front porch or someplace and just taking the laptop or taking more walking meetings or whatever?
Yeah, so it's funny, I started this ritual tradition in Cisco where if there was a meeting where I didn't have to be on WebEx and I was just talking, I'm in building 9 and, there's a parking garage right behind it. So I just circle the parking lot. I call them walking one-on-ones. And I do that with some engineers. I say, let's just get out there and walk. And that just started a year ago. And I do that. It's harder now. The weather's actually been relatively nice. So yeah, I'm going to try to take more meetings just outside if I can. I don't mind just taking no meetings outside and just taking a break, sitting outside and reading. I don't have to work outside. I don't mind working my desk. I got 2 monitors. I just need to be outside every once in a while. I think whether I'm taking a meeting outside or as long as I'm just outside every once in a while, I think that's good. I just went outside today just for a 5-minute walk, got the mail, just walked around. Even that, get a little bit of vitamin D, right?
Yep.
That's just good.
Oh, you have to. You have to. It's so interesting. I've been trying to inject sacred time throughout the week. So I block off, my wife and I have an agreement where 3 hours every day, pre-scheduled every single day, that I watch our son so she can get her client work done. Right. And it's just interesting you say, because you got to find those times make those times. I took a 25-minute walk earlier and got a 1.5 miles in just because I knew I was going to be in meetings the rest of the day. So I wanted to get the energy amped up a little bit. I'm I can't take a nap or anything today. That's not going to be a reality, or whatever else I would use to get a break. So got to get that in sooner. Well, listen, I've got one last question for you before we wrap. It's kind of one I'd like to ask everybody, which is, I've been using the metaphor. I'm trying to get away from this whole metaphor. I think I mentioned this to you once before, of work-life balance, and I heard this recently, and it really triggered for me that the idea of work-life balance, it's not bad, but I think it creates a misunderstanding of what your day could look like, because you're never going to find an actual balance on a daily basis because it injects this sort of inherent, well, if I work for 2 hours and I can have 2 hours to do stuff I like doing and vice versa. It's like, but that's not how life works, especially now that we're at home all the time. So the idea that this person came up with was a rhythm. So kind of like a sheet of music, there's a lot of highs and lows. They come at different points in time. But at the end of that longer period of time, a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever, there's an actual rhythm to it. You're getting the things you need to get done, but you found the pace that made sense for you. So I guess my question for you is, if you could think of one activity that you're doing differently now than you did before to help inject that rhythm, what would that be?
Yeah. Good question. So, and by the way, I totally agree. And it's impossible to, I think, achieve work-life balance on any given day. But I think it just sort of averaged over time is really where you need to do it. So you may not have a chance to, hang out with your family or spend time with your kids on any given day. But, at some point, maybe you take more time to do that. So, I'm trying to, for example, to your point, I'm trying to make at least a part of a Saturday just no computer, like nothing, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the one activity we try to do every day, my wife and I, we try to go on a walk. It's usually in the evening, but just like try to just at least get that one piece of exercise in, try a few miles. We were actually last race, which was a 5K in Las Vegas. It was a rock and roll marathon, but we ran the 5K and the 10K. And so we were actually prepping for a race. Now, I don't know when we'll be allowed to race because that's social distancing like gone awry, right? There's no social distancing when you're all crammed, totally. 20,000 people to start a race. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but I guess we're acting as if we can at some point.
I think I missed it. Did you say a rock and roll marathon?
So rock and roll marathons are a series of marathons in different cities. So we did the one in Las Vegas in November. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like a brand. It's called the Rock and Roll Marathon.
Oh, okay.
And you run a 5K, 10K, there's a half marathon and a full marathon. There's different races you can sign up for. So we did the 5K one night, 10K the other night. The last part of the 10K is down the Vegas Strip, so it's pretty cool. But so we're hoping we can enter a race again at some point when they allow these things again. So we figured we might as well just walk and stay in shape for when the eventuality comes that we can enter a race again, and then we'll do it. So,
yeah. That's cool, man. Right on. Well, Gaurav, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. It's great to hear from more folks that aren't just in the same org that I end up working in, or a lot of us. I'm excited to have more and more people join the show that have totally different perspectives on what they do and how they do it every day. So, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff, for doing the series. It's really great that you're doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for providing that to us.
Absolutely. Most welcome.
All right.
And thank you guys all. Thank you guys all so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for next week's shows where we have a few more folks on to talk about what life is like at home for them. Have a great one, guys. Bye.